So, as many of you will be aware, there were a number of legislative changes in South Australia last year which came into effect. And while these changes may not keep you up at night, they are important to your exploration operations. So today I'm going to go over the top tips for navigating them. So the topics that I'll be discussing are exploration license renewals, the expenditure policy update, division of an exploration license, compliance reports, and notice of entry requirements. So there were some extensive changes around the renewals of exploration licenses. And the main aim of these changes were to reduce land banking and the need to apply for subsequent exploration license applications over the same area of ELs. The Act also introduced a new 6-year term rather than 5 years and added a maximum aggregate term of 18 years for which the exploration license can now be held for. And as many of the existing exploration licenses are under the old framework, the Act also brings in transitional provisions to take these ELs into the new framework. So the key tip here is that you need to work out the deemed age of your exploration license. So here we've got a little example. If your current exploration license is EL 3333, these are all made up, but just for example, and it's in its 3rd year of operations, and it's had 2 previous subsequent exploration licenses held. At the end of that 3rd year term, you're going to be allowed to renew that exploration license for a further 2 terms to take it to its 5-year maximum term under the old framework. At your next renewal at the end of that 5-year term, it's going to be deemed to be in its 12th year because of those subsequent exploration licenses that were previously held. This brings it under the new framework, and then you can renew that exploration license for a further term of 6 years to take it to its aggregate term of 18 years. Once you reach that 18-year mark, you're going to have to either surrender that exploration license or apply for a retention lease or mining lease over that area. So this is also important for the exploration expenditure policy, working out that deemed age. So the new policy is based, the expenditure commitment is dependent on the age and the area of the tenement. So we also have that. So if your exploration license is in the first 2 years, then this doesn't apply, but all other exploration licenses, your expenditure, 60% of it should actually now have to be new data acquisition or on-ground work. So this can include anything from landholder negotiations on ground, field work, data collection, and analysis. And if you're not meeting these commitments, department can obviously impose area reductions for your exploration licenses. So the top tip for this is to make sure that you're reporting those new data acquisition costs or on-ground work costs separately to those office-based costs. Another inclusion in the Mining Act which is new is Section 30AA3. Now, this section allows for an existing exploration license holder to come to an agreement with a third party to sell off part of their tenement. Once you apply for this to the department, they approve it, and then the third party gets exclusive rights to apply for a new ELA over that area. So the top tip around this is that it's a great commercial opportunity to split your exploration license where you're not going to explore anymore in that specific area. Hetherington was able to prepare a lodge and have approved the first application of its kind by the department this year. And so I'm just going to take you through an example of what that means. So currently you might have this EL and you've got this area where you don't want to conduct any further exploration on. You might have a buyer for that, and that's going to be your designated party. So that designated party can then, once you come to an agreement with them, they can actually apply for a new ELA over that area exclusively. So it doesn't you don't have to just relinquish that ground and it can go to anyone, it can go to this designated party. It's a two-step process where you have to prepare the division form and lodge that with the department, have it approved, and then that designated party can actually apply for the ELA. In our experience, we find that it's better to do those two components together and lodge it all in one go, just to reduce that administrative burden. And then cooperation is integral to the timing of this application and when it's granted. So if both parties aren't cooperating, it's going to delay that time frame, and obviously it's contingent on the commercial arrangement as well. Next, we have compliance reporting. Clause 77 of the mining regulations brought in that compliance reports need to be lodged for all your tenements. So if you've got an EPIP approved for your ELs, you need to lodge a compliance report, and then where you weren't lodging compliance reports for your mining leases, you need to make sure you're doing that as well. So the top tip for this is to make sure you're using those terms of references from the department's website, 12 for ELs specifically and 9 for MLs. And then lastly, we have notice of entry. Under the previous Act, the notice of entry requirement, when you service that notice, you had to wait a 21-day period before you could enter the land, whereas now it's a 42-day period. So obviously where the implications come in here is that it's going to extend that time frame for your project. So the tip is just to make sure that you're aware of this and incorporating that into your project timeline. So that brings me to the key takeaways, which is just what I've talked about, all the topics, your top tips, and where you're going to get those regulatory references from. So if you want to go away and read about them, that's where you're going to get them. So that's the end of my presentation, and I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, Hetherington is sponsoring the Barista Coffee Cart, so get yourself a coffee and come have a chat with us. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you all for listening.